sexy on secular sexuality. Oh yeah. We got sexy.
You know, your voice matches up surprisingly well with that.
It sounds really familiar. I don't know where I've heard it before.
Technical secrets coming out here.
Well, hello and welcome to Secular Sexuality. I am Megan Bonner. With me, as always, is my co-host.
Hey, I'm Christy Powell.
And with us today is...
Hello, I'm Eric Murphy.
The voice of secular sexuality.
Oh yeah.
Yep, nope, okay, you win. All right,
Yeah.
he wins. Game over.
There's just no competition. I mean, I can try to get down in those dulcet tones, but I don't think I can do it.
We just get sexy together. Right here on the air. Oh yeah.
Is this close? No.
Nope.
Nope.
I feel like I need an adult, to be honest. So, thank you so much for having me on. This is a ton of fun, and I know that you had me briefly on during your inaugural episode. So I'm really glad
and you passed.
Yeah!
You know?
Yes.
We were all surprised, but a little relieved.
Yeah. I absolutely had a blast when we played that that game together.
The point keepers are right behind you.
Yeah. Always,
We
never
keep them
without
there.
our trusty jar of finger cots.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I have to say, when we played that game, and you can still check it out in the clips, I was amazed because previously we had played it with Jamie, and I thought that the man was unstoppable. His ability to guess sex words out of thin air was just absolutely remarkable. And then the two of you go head-to-head, and you destroyed him. You can tell him I said so. It was not close.
I love it.
It
Yay.
was also not pretty.
All right, I'm going to be messing with these finger cuts through the rest of the episode.
As you should.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get you a fidget spinner or maybe an iPad in case you need to watch some TV while we're talking. You know, while the adults speak.
Chase
That's
a mouse
okay.
across the screen.
I got it.
Okay,
I got
good
it.
to know. Good to know.
Well, today our topic is, religious horror stories in the sex and sexuality context. I thankfully personally have not had a personal experience, but I do know that we have plenty of stories to choose from.
No question, whether we're talking about in this room or nationally or internationally. You know, the truth is we started this show really because of this question, because of this issue, because religion so often
Well, what is that question?
Well, the question is, how do you express yourself sexually? How do you accept yourself sexually when religion in so many places and so many ways is the boot on the neck of our libidos?
Yeah.
I don't want to overstate it, but I don't know that there is
I don't think you could overstate it.
Yeah, you know, for all of the laws and the concerns about diseases and all of the different things that might complicate our sexuality, I don't know that any of them complicate it more thoroughly than particularly large organized religion.
Yes. That's, short answer.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, how do you even parse that out? Because it is such a big concept. I mean, we do it for an hour and a half every week in a lot of ways.
And you have many, many, many years to fill as long as that's the subject. I mean, really,
No question.
it's amazing how pervasive it is. I think that when it comes to sexual hang-ups after indoctrination, for many people, myself included, that was the last thing to go. I mean, because everything else you rationalize, oh, hey, this was part of indoctrination. Yeah, the idea of heaven and hell and these ideas of redemption and prayer, community, and these different things that wrap you up in religion. And you go, okay, well, now I'm shedding what I had before, but you don't always realize that it has tendrils that just burrow in. And so it's not until you're taking an honest look that you realize, holy crap, it is really...
Well, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's pervasive in society now. The religious hang-ups have become the norm of our society, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that that's true in a lot of ways. I may be somewhat unique in this, but I think I can also say that our sexuality is a huge part of what drives us. Right? I mean, we don't have to get overly Freudian, but the reality is how we view our sexuality and what we're willing to do in order to embrace that sexuality is a huge part of what defines us.
Oh, yeah.
Base instinct.
Right. So that being the case, for me, sexuality was sort of the thing that I was so desperately willing to seek out and pursue that it was what left religion in the dust for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if that wasn't such a barrier, I think I would likely still be the conservative Christian that I was raised to be.
Because in the realm of sex and sexuality, that was the biggest hurdle, but that was also the hurdle that you went over first?
Yeah, absolutely, because it was the one I had the most motivation towards. You know, I was never going to be a happy, repressed sexual person.
Sure.
And so my desire to seek that out is kind of what led me here to becoming a sex therapist, to joining up with the ACA. Like all of these things that have become such passions in my life is because I was sort of reacting to that very difficult situation.
That's awesome. I just want to take a second and say that is so cool. And I'm really, really glad you're here. And I'm really glad that you're getting to be someone that people can identify with in that way. You know, it's one thing for someone to say it's okay, but it's another for someone to say, I relate.
Yeah.
And there are so many people who go their entire lives without ever exploring what makes them happy because of, whatever ridiculous societal norms were put on them, that they weren't able to explore, what makes them sexually happy or fulfilled. So kudos to you, man. Cheers. I love it.
Yeah, and, I would just say to anybody listening, anybody concerned, these are not unimportant issues. We so often are looking at saying things like, oh, it's just sex, or kind of minimizing it. But it is a hugely important aspect of our identity. And so, I mean, it's enough so that we're willing to come here and talk about it every week, and I think with good cause.
Break down boundaries, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Rock on. So before you dig in, I gotta kind of break the wall of silence here, because I usually have energy drinks before Talk Heathen.
Yeah.
And right now I'm staring at a gin and tonic.
So that's what's in your mug?
Is this
weird that we have like matching mugs? I don't
know. Mine has a slight piney smell.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Sinner. All right.
That's because we have fun on Secular Sexuality.
You have fun, but you bring me on to the horror stories episode, not the kink episode. No,
right?
No, you got to bring me in the rough one. That's fine. By the way, we are reading the live chat. People are saying Eric needs to fill out a FetLife profile. The people want to know. They need to know.
The people. And by the people, I definitely mean the viewing audience, and nobody specifically that I know or that is in this room.
Or in the audience.
Bring me on horror
going
stories.
to
That's
be
fine.
searching for that. So stay tuned.
Who knows? There may be a guest appearance when Megan visits FetLife.
Oh, no. Actually, no, I'm looking forward to that.
Step into those DMs.
So, where do we go from here? How can I help and move on? What's our...
Well, I heard that you had done a little digging on some religious horror stories.
I have.
And...
Can I share?
You can. I'm wondering, should we know beforehand just how bad does it get?
It gets trigger warning bad. So trigger warning for people who have experienced rape, incest, abuse, and those kinds of things. It's not pretty, but it's real. It's true. So
I suppose this would be a good time then to introduce everyone to, there was a Facebook poll, and we have our new trigger warning mascot, which is Pickles, the what was it?
Pickles the Cuddle Pug
The Cuddle Pug.
Officially our interim emotional support mascot.
Yes.
Interim?
Yeah, because Pickles is currently leading in the polls.
However, Pickles can be unseated if you all out there want to add your own personal pet pictures to the poll and see who
Where's
may
Pickles?
get.
Oh,
There's
God.
Pickles.
Hey.
There's Pickles.
It's so ugly. Why? Why would you do this? Oh my gosh! It looks like they forgot ET at home.
It's a very depressed E.T. left at home.
It makes me think of Grumpy Cat, except Grumpy Cat had a really bad day.
He looks like he wants to teach you how to use the Force. I mean, I don't. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not here to. Okay, I'm totally shaming you.
There is
don't
no
know.
try.
That is an ugly dog.
I think Pickles is like really desperate for a hug, which
Well,
is
yeah,
kind of
just
the
a
idea we're
blanket.
expressing. Yeah.
That's true.
I mean,
So the idea is when you see Pickles come up again, you will know that the triggering topics have ended and you can resume watching.
And I do just want to mention again that right there on our Facebook page, if you check us out, there is a poll where we are accepting submissions and looking for our permanent, long-term emotional support animals. So please help us vote on our mascot.
Term, midterm-ish. Yeah.
I'm gonna flood you with pictures of miniature pigs in little boots.
Absolutely.
do.
That is going to happen.
Can any of them be wearing a Halloween costume?
All of the miniature pigs.
See,
Send
but
your
if-
pictures of miniature pigs to sex@atheist-community.org.
See,
Thank
my
you.
only concern is that you're going to split the pig vote if you get too many pictures of pigs in little boots.
And
Is
then
that a problem? I've see. Look at that. This is much better.
I could
than horror
channel
stories.
Jamie and
we
say
can,
a political note about having too many.
Nope.
I mean, isn't that what ends up happening is we all get excited to vote for the candidate that we adore, but then once the primaries are over and we finally get to the polls, it's just a bunch of pigs in suits that we have to choose between? Nope, too
No
much?
comment.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Don't mind me.
Pickles came up, and that means we are on to triggering topics. Eric, take us away with the really depressing shit.
Jesse Clark, you're right. It does look like a deranged Jawa. I'll say it. I'm not afraid. It's an ugly dog. So, thank you. Thank you for bringing me up a bit before I have to share this.
Yes.
But we were talking about this, and I was thinking about horror stories and things that I could share about my own life. But really, this is a platform. Us being on here is an incredibly lucky and privileged position to be in. And because of that, we have an obligation to talk about horrible things that are happening, you know, especially for people who can't speak out. And the cause that comes to mind very often for me when this kind of topic is brought up is the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints. Also called the FLDS. It is a splinter group off of the Latter-day Saints, which is the Mormon church, that believe in something called polygamy. Polygamy is a practice of one husband and multiple wives. And
The opposite of what it should be, but continue.
there are. Sorry, now I had to kind of absorb that. Anyway, so there are a ton of different groups, and there's some amazing books written by people who've escaped FLDS compounds. Right, most famous is Warren Jeffs. Right, and Warren Jeffs is currently in prison right now. And why would they follow somebody who's in prison? In prison for what? Oh, in prison for rape and incest of his own children, and just heinous stuff. If you're interested in reading about it, I do suggest read Under the Banner of Heaven. Is a really, really good intro to FLDS causes and what kind of goes on. It's a good in-depth look.
And that's a book.
That is a book, Under the Banner of Heaven. There are several others, but what has stood out to me in these stories are a few very, very key things. One of those things is bleeding the beast as a practice. And bleeding the beast is what they call having lots of children to try and get government money because you're wanting to take money from the government because there's this big anti-government stance.
Right, naturally.
Yeah. So
government shouldn't be giving out handouts and taking all of our money, but since they are giving
Or
out
telling us
handouts,
what
we
to
should
do.
take as much
even
as
more
possible.
as we can. Yeah.
Right. And there have been reports of women who hope that their children are born with Down syndrome, because and this is in the book. Is they're more docile and you get more money every month. Also the level of incest, that happens is so intense that there's so many stillborn children. I mean, it is very, very common to see a lot of these.
The inbreeding.
Yeah, and it's horrifying. We take a look at how sex impacts or how religion impacts sex. And we talk about in our daily lives, there's this sense of ownership in a relationship, which is kind of weird when you think about it, and there's this sense of of being with someone forever, and how that might impact you, 20 years down the road if you're not happy. There's this idea that society's going to push you to stay together. And we've got all of these different things we battle with, but we have to pay attention and realize that shit like this is going on, right? And you should do something. It's not just about talking about our own sexual hangups. It's about getting out there and trying to help people who are trapped, right? Finding children who are raped from the ages, I think like age 6, I saw, and it just goes on.
Is it too early for me to rage quit today?
Right? No, it gets worse. It gets worse.
Yeah, it really does. And we're talking about, yes, that bigger picture stuff you mentioned of everybody's different hangups and the different things that we all struggle through. But you're right. There is a not small percentage of the population that is not just struggling with some hangups or some emotional difficulties, but is being really held hostage in these different ways.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is for people, this is mostly young girls, right? If there are too many boys, the story is a boy turns 18 and he gets a bus ticket to Los Angeles with pamphlets on where to find the nearest homeless shelter. Have fun. And that's for the boys who make it to 18. Poofers is a term that they use for young boys that just fucking disappear. They just dis-a-fucking-peer. That's it.
Vanish out of nowhere.
Just gone. How many lost kids are there because they were all right, now this is, I know it's gross, but they're competition for their relatives.
Yeah.
For their siblings.
I mean, this sounds like the type of conversation that we would be having about a Pride of Lions. This is not evolved, sophisticated human beings, cultured human beings. This sounds like something from a nature documentary where we would kind of go like, man, alligators eat their babies. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely devastating to picture human
But
faces.
at least alligators don't fuck their babies first.
And I don't just want to pick on Mormons, right? The FLDS is not the only fundamentalist group who does this, right? Anywhere you find these fundamentalist offshoots, these branches, you're bound to find this kind of bullshit. And it's not just the big religions either. This kind of stuff gets brought up when you look at cult activity. And you see, young girls being married off to men 3, 4, 5 times their age.
Well, yeah, zooming out, I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt.
go
I
ahead.
just want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time on kind of the main story for tonight, which is zooming out from these like fundamentalist offshoots of major religions. potentially the biggest organized religion on the planet, certainly the most powerful politically, is the Catholic Church. And we're still seeing constantly a stream after years and years since, Spotlight did the original expose in Boston, these gigantic controversies coming out of the Catholic Church.
We're having that conversation now. We're having that conversation now
and
in
still.
October of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I want to also put a spotlight on the idea that, no pun intended to the or the movie, but the idea that you can't just say, oh, that's this one denomination or that it's this one subgroup of, crazies who went off and did this. No, it's the entire fucking culture that is created by the religious doctrines. Just because you may not agree with this, you may not think it's right, and you may say, well, that's not in my church, that's not in my house. Fuck you, because yes, it is. The whole culture is all about just turning a blind eye. And I don't care if you are in a mainstream, Lutheran church, or if you're in the Catholic Church, or if you're in the Protestant, whatever. It happens everywhere. And just because you don't want to see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Well, and that's a tricky place to be, because in wanting to prepare for this story, one of the things that I did was reach out to a wonderful family friend who is not only Catholic and passionately so, but is really an expert in a lot of ways on sort of the history of the church and the Reformation and Vatican II and these different things. And I reached out to her and I said, just from an outsider's perspective, what is the thing that we might miss about this story that's coming out of Pennsylvania, this grand jury report that we'll want to speak a little bit more of? And the thing that she really impressed upon me is that this isn't simply the case of a person who was sanctioned by the church abused another person, or a person got away with it because of their role in the church. What she really highlighted is the fact that this is literally somebody that we call father. Right? Yeah. When we're talking about a priest. This is somebody who is a boss in the sense that they are running the organization. This is somebody who is a leader in that everybody's looking up for them. They have not just a position of power, but they are ensconced in this idea that what they're saying is coming from God. That is a type of power that is in many ways unparalleled. We might have the most powerful despot on the planet. We might have a situation like Kim Jong-un in North Korea where he is overwhelmingly in control of people's lives. But to be the person responsible for somebody else's spiritual well-being, for whether or not they go to heaven or to hell, eternity, to be the gatekeeper of that, and to hold that power of responsibility over a person's life, at least in that person's mind, which is really the same as holding it in reality in a lot of ways. To have that person abuse you, to have that person silence you, to have that person take advantage of that power is devastating.
To take away your will.
Absolutely.
Autonomy. Yeah.
So the main thing that we wanted to focus on tonight, it's a story that sadly is old news, is that grand jury report coming out of Pennsylvania. It's been only 6 weeks. We're talking about the third of 3 recent investigations into the diocese in Pennsylvania. And we're talking about, in 2005, there were some 60 different priests named. In 2016, there was another 50 abusers that were named. Now, in 2018, back in July, we had yet another report that identified more than 100 different priests with over 1,000 victims. And we're so caught up in a Trump White House news cycle, and rightly so, the Kavanaugh trial or hearing and all of these different things, that this has completely slipped from our minds.
Yeah.
Not mine.
Well, I know that one thing that people can do is become a member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation if they're particularly interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
They have a section in their newsletter called the Black Collar Crime Blotter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing.
Well, and that's one of the things we talked about before the show is that this has become commonplace in enough ways that you can have a weekly column or a monthly column about it and not really run out of material to talk about. You know, it's a devastating fact, but when I was crawling through all of the details of this most recent incident and looking at all of the things that are happening in different states, report coming out of San Diego this week.
Because it's not just Pennsylvania.
And New Orleans, and yeah, absolutely. With all of that going on, if you get into the details of the story, there are so many incidences that we're not sitting here talking about, Kitty Genevieve. We're not talking about like a specific sad story that you can put a human face to, because there are so many of those that really it's more like reporting on baseball stats than it is about having a real conversation about abuse. And the idea that we're comparing abused children to stat lines on a score sheet, on a box score is... But that's what it looks like.
But because of the sheer volume, you have to distill it down to that.
Well, and from there, I think that we can beat this drum all day. And I think that the better use of our time is to really look at the opportunities that present themselves.
Yeah.
The good news is there is pressure and change. This most recent report out of Pennsylvania was in a lot of ways informed by the Penn State investigation into Jerry Sandusky and everything that's been going on in Happy Valley there. And on the one hand, my initial reaction to this story was to be heartbroken that it was happening there. In this place where people have already very publicly mourned sexual abuse, and it's been in the public eye, and people have been devastated by that experience. And so to find out that it was happening there just made me really hurt for those people, only to later realize that the reason that this report came out of Pennsylvania was because there was increased legislation, there was increased focus, there was more people looking into these kinds of abuses, which brings the question, there are 49 other states in the union.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How many of them, if they had a Penn State type scandal and actually dug in and actually started asking these questions, what would they find?
Well, and I think it's also not just the state. I mean, the towns. How many cities? How many parishes? How many, whatever you call them, churches or whatever the communal term is.
Yeah, and we're talking about a vastly international religion.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that's just absolutely mind-blowing. I'm kind of taking that all in. I mean, so I guess I have two questions, and I want to make sure that I put them in order. One of them is, what can people do? And number two is a very specific call to action, right? And the very specific call to action is, and it's I know you know this, but it's directed to people watching, okay? So here's the deal. This is not new, but we're getting to a place where we're learning about it, right? There have been these different pushes in our society to find equity and to find justice where it hasn't been, and it's not just this, right? Women's rights has made a lot of amazing pushes. Yeah, and we want to keep that up. It's not new. It's been going on. We're just doing something about it. But if you wake up tomorrow and we haven't fixed this, then children are still being put at risk of getting hurt, of getting abused, right? People who should be in jail are not getting the justice that they deserve.
And children whose innocence should be protected is just being thrown away.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what are you going to do in the morning? Right? If you're listening to this tomorrow, if you're listening to this a month from now, what are you going to wake up to? Are you going to wake up to seeing it magically go away? What are you going to do? And Christy, what can people do?
Yeah, I would say that it's very difficult to be faced with the problem that we're talking about and feel any sense of victory or opportunity. But I do believe that it's there. I do believe that in the same way that we have been largely ignorant of like police violence, particularly against minorities and some of these different situations, that those things have always been going on. The Black Lives Matter movement could have started 50 years ago if we had cell phone videos, if we had body cameras and these different things. It's only because we're getting this information that we're starting to react. And as devastating as this circumstance is, I don't feel like it's new. I do feel like, however, what is new is our opportunity to do something about it. And we're seeing that.
So what you're saying is we're all kind of getting more woke.
We're getting there. We are getting there. Let's hope. I know this is a week where it's easy to be disenfranchised. I know that when we compare Anita Hill with Christina Blasey Ford, we're not maybe earning as many points as we wish. But I do think that in this instance, things are turning a corner. There are a number of different, I love this phrase, attorneys general is the proper plural of that term. The attorneys general of a number of different states are following Pennsylvania's lead and beginning to investigate. There are most states where it is considered improper or illegal or against procedure for them to comment on open investigations in this way. So we can't say exactly how many, but we do have on record that Florida, Illinois, Missouri, New York, Nebraska, New Jersey, Kentucky, they have all publicly come out and said that they are aware of what's going on in Pennsylvania, and they're using that as a model to launch their own investigations.
Good.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so I think that anybody who lives in any of those states has a responsibility and obligation to reach out to their attorney general, to reach out to vote and be aware of these things. And people who aren't in those states, I think that responsibility is almost double.
Yes.
Which is where I want to go next, because the answer to the question of what can we be doing, I really want to highlight two things. One is a hotline number that we're going to make sure to throw up in the comments, make sure you have access to, but I'll say it once now, is 1-800-656-HOPE. It's 1-800-656-HOPE is a opportunity to report any form of sexual abuse towards children. That's a national hotline that each individual state is going to have their own children and family services and these different organizations. I would encourage everybody who is even suspicious of abuse towards a child to reach out to one of these types of hotlines and to report that abuse, because that will trigger an investigation. You calling a hotline is not going to land your family priest in jail. What it will do is trigger an investigation into whether or not that daycare worker, that uncle, that priest needs to be in jail. And that's a conversation that we need to be comfortable with having. If there's a suspicion, if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one way to start and to do that.
And I just had a question related to that number.
Sure.
Is, like you said, if you see something, say something. Is it also a good number to call for people who know something is happening but don't have an idea of who the perpetrator might be?
That's definitely the case. We're talking again about triggering an investigation, not necessarily about
Pointing
solving
fingers.
a crime. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
If there is a concern, I mean, we're talking about sexual abuse of children here. This is not a gray issue. This is not a conservative, progressive, theist or atheist type of question.
It's literally fucking children.
Predators
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, we should be ridding our society of people who want to predate on our children. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
That's there's no debate about that.
How could you not agree with that?
Yeah, that's one of those things that shouldn't really be separating people.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to highlight...
there's good people on both sides. No.
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 So the other thing I wanted to highlight is the SNAP network, the survivors network of those abused by priests. They are a not-for-profit organization that is international. And they have a great website, snapnetwork.org, that really answers your question better than I ever could in terms of, okay, this is your state, this is your opportunity, this is who your attorney general is, this is how to contact them, this is your senator, your representative, this is what you can be doing. This is an opportunity for you to donate towards providing therapy and support for these different people. This is your opportunity to make political change. And that particular organization, I thought, did the best job of anybody out there of providing resources specifically to people who have been affected by this type of abuse.
That's wonderful. That is really wonderful. What's the organization called again?
Yeah, this is SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. They have different chapters all over the world, including here in Austin. And we actually have Carol on the line from the SNAP of Austin.
Why am I in this seat? Carol needs to be in this seat. Yes, that's awesome. But before we get to Carol, I hope I'm not stepping on your feet here.
No, not at all.
We have 5 open lines. This is a time for us to talk and for people to share. It's not always going to be happy, sunshine, and rainbows. Sometimes we need to address things that are serious and that need to be talked about. And we want you to call in. 512-686-0279. Carol is kindly waiting on the line, but we have 5 open lines. So share it, get it out, call in. We'd love to hear from you.
And the serious topics are just as important as the fun ones, if not more so.
Yeah, plus the serious topics do come with cuddly pugs. So
hey, that's right.
We try to put at least a spoonful of sugar with it.
So does that mean that Pickle the cuddle pug comes back? Do you have more to say on the Catholic Church?
You know, I mean, I do. I
Don't
do.
we all?
But no, I think that the more important question, because we can all sit here and jerk
Not
off with our
debate.
anger. Right? Yeah, not debate and just agree at how awful everything has always been, always, forever.
And then Megan will rage quit, and then you'll just be left with, these two and Pickle the pug.
You don't.
I mean, I would watch that show. I'm going to be real honest with you. If you and I had a sitcom and it was like 2 guys, a pug, and a pizza place,
And occasionally,
I would watch the
occasionally
shit
a
out of
chick
it.
walks out in anger.
Like a canned laugh track.
Yeah.
Can I have like kids I've adopted and I'm just trying to take care of them, and then you come in and no, I like this.
You left the cap off the toothpaste again, Eric. I'd watch that show.
I'm down.
Okay.
I'm down. Let's do this. Before we do that, though, I apparently need to people think I need to fill out a FetLife profile. Like I don't have
Like
one.
they keep saying.
You don't know my username.
Hey-o.
Anyway, the people want to know. And I think I'm pushing off of the topic. Let's get back.
Who could blame you for wanting a little levity?
Yeah. It's been pretty serious. So are we ready to take some calls?
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to start by talking with Carol about what kinds of things people in Austin, people watching from all over the country, all over the world can be doing in this situation.
Well, we have Carol on the line. Hello, Carol.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to the show.
Oh, we are very happy to have you on with us. Christy has told us a little bit about your background, but if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit more info about yourself.
And I just want to interrupt first to say thank you so much for calling in. Since I emailed you this morning at about 3 a.m. And it was really remarkable that you were able to be here with us tonight, and I thank you for that.
I was up at 3. Why didn't you email me?
Well, a little bit about myself. I have worked in the semiconductor industry for over 18 years, and I currently work in the biomedical industry. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. I finished my degree after getting out of the service. I was in the Army during Desert Shield, which was the Gulf War, the first phase of the Gulf War. And I am also a survivor. And I went through a lot of counseling and therapy after I got out of the service related to sexual abuse, and then went on to finish my degree, start a family, and work on my career. And then as my children got older, I started asking myself, what can I do in a human rights arena? Because that's always been a passion of mine. And unfortunately, child sexual abuse is an area that I have some knowledge about.
Sure.
And so in addition to that, I went through a program in Austin with the Citizens Police Academy several years ago, and while I was going through the program, they had a detective from Vice and a detective from the Human Trafficking Division talk to the class, and I had always thought of human trafficking as smuggling people across borders. And to my heartbreak and amazement, I learned that human trafficking is the trafficking of our children here in the United States, here in Texas, here in Austin. It's the trafficking of domestic minors in the state of Texas. And it's an issue across the globe. But it was always something that I thought was in another country or, not local. And I always thought it was the immigrants. I never thought of it as being our children. And that connected with me because statistically, the children who are rescued out of child sex trafficking, a common denominator, all of them have a history of child sexual abuse, which is amazing to me. And furthermore, with domestic minors when they're rescued out of trafficking, currently we don't have anywhere other than our juvenile detention centers for them to go. And the services that the children require to heal and recover are so disconnected and so vast to deal with their trauma that a lot of the children don't get all of the services and care that they really need to heal. And so the combination of my desire to do something in the human rights area related to child sexual abuse and a new awareness of how prevalent human trafficking is locally and that it's our children who are being trafficked was the impetus for me to look for opportunities in those areas. And so I started doing some volunteer work with the trafficking and then started doing some more investigation as to what could I do with regard to my personal case, because I had always, so let me start with my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, was to silence the issue within the family, within the community, within the congregation, and that's common for my parents' generation and prior to that. It's unusual for my parents' generation for anyone to stand up or speak out about the issue, and it's still relatively uncommon now. Very few children report when it happens.
Yeah.
And when they do report, oftentimes the person that they're reporting to doesn't have the skill set or the knowledge to respond appropriately.
Yeah.
And that was my case. My parents didn't know how to respond and didn't respond appropriately. And I don't hold that don't hold that against them. I don't blame them. It was just the reality of my experience. And so I want adults to learn how to respond appropriately.
Yeah,
so and that through education.
And I certainly appreciate you extending that empathy to folks who grew up in a different world, have a greater discomfort perhaps in discussing these issues. But it brings up for me a conversation I had with my grandmother before she passed a couple of years ago as this Penn State story was breaking and all the talk of Jerry Sandusky and these different things. And part of the narrative surrounding that was this idea that that Joe Paterno wouldn't have understood what he was hearing, that he was from a different generation, that he wouldn't have been necessarily comfortable or really recognized what the implications were of everything that he was hearing. And I, at the age of 24, 25 at the time, was trying to be really gracious and deferential towards that. As I was talking about this with my, at the time, 89-year-old grandmother, and she, was really considerate and thankful and said all of that, but she was also quick to say, look, I'm old. I'm as old as Joe Paterno is, and it doesn't give me a pass. It doesn't give me an excuse to be uncomfortable dealing with these issues. It doesn't give me an excuse to not be responsible for protecting children. And I mean, at the age of 25, looking into almost a century of history and wisdom and understanding, was devastated by that comment, by the fact that no matter who we are or how uncomfortable we are with a topic, we all have a certain level of responsibility to look out for one another and to do the uncomfortable things, and frankly, to have the uncomfortable conversations, to have, an hour and a half where we could be, shooting condoms like rubber bands at each other and playing silly sex trivia games. We have an obligation, I think, to spend some time on these important issues.
And I think...
I agree.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and it's taken me a lifetime to get to where I'm at with having that compassion and empathy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at the time that I reported, I didn't understand why I got the response that I did. And even through my 20s and 30s, I didn't agree with that response. And my family and I, we still don't agree on that issue. We're still pretty divided on that. I lost my train of thought.
Well, let me ask you, what would you say to anybody who's listening who is themselves a survivor, but hasn't necessarily taken any steps to acknowledge that to themselves, to discuss that with family, to perhaps report or prosecute? What would you say to somebody who is in the very early stages of addressing this problem that they've experienced?
I would say two things. First is please, please, please make a report to law enforcement, no matter how long ago it happened, or no matter how long ago it occurred. That would be the first thing.
Now, if people are uncomfortable calling 911, say, they say this isn't an emergency or what have you, what would you recommend then to make that report?
I would recommend calling the RAIN hotline or the HOPE number that you gave, and then they can give a reference for who to talk to locally. But in the end, survivors. So, like for example, for myself, if I were today to go to Safe Place and make a report and talk with a counselor or a therapist, they're separate from law enforcement. They're a separate entity.
And
they're not mandated reporters.
Oh, sorry.
So making sure to circle into law enforcement in one way or another, whether you're talking to your therapist or you're talking to your, hopefully new and non-harassing priest or whoever it is it might be in your life that's giving you support in this situation, you still need to follow up with actual prosecutors, with the actual investigative arm of the government.
Well, and that's, for me, I was very naive when starting out. I thought that I would report sexual assault and magic would happen and they would be prosecuted. That was kind of my naivety.
Sure.
And that's not how it works. There's many layers that one goes through to bring civil or criminal charges. But the very first step is to just make a report to the local law enforcement agency, and if the incident didn't occur where you live currently, find out who to contact as far as law enforcement goes for where that incident did occur and make a report there.
Okay, so the opportunity to do that would be at that 1-800-656-HOPE number that we talked about.
They may be able to connect you to the right number, and maybe not. My experience has been that oftentimes the survivors have to Google that city and that police department to get the number to call into.
Yeah, that was one of the shocking things for me about investigating this story is outside of SNAP, I'm not saying that there aren't other great organizations out there, but none of them seem to have any sort of national or international presence. And there are these local state hotlines and these different things that have been set up. But if anybody anywhere has a problem, there's really not one singular place for those to get funneled through.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not one-stop shopping.
Sure.
The counseling and the therapy is completely separate from the legal process.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step in making that report is calling the police department for that in that city or in that county.
Okay.
And that's separate from the counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, what would happen, depending on whether or not the statute of limitations has expired, the information would go to a detective if the statute of limitation is not expired, and that detective would be assigned to the case to investigate. And some survivors contact a lawyer first before they contact law enforcement. I don't have a recommendation either way because I'm not a legal expert. I'm just a survivor and talking to what my experience has been. And just go from there. But there are two other things so those would be the first two things. Another thing I recommend is if you're a survivor or an advocate for survivors, please write your attorney generals and ask them to do a grand jury investigation, similar to what Pennsylvania has done.
Yeah, that was my next question is if you are not a survivor yourself, but are an ally, are somebody who's concerned. The snapnetwork.org had great information about how to find out who your local contact person was and how you can interact with your local government in order to make a change. What would you say, in short, to anybody who's out there who's just concerned, who wants to donate, who wants to get involved, who wants to do the moral and the responsible thing to intervene on behalf of a really fucking terrible situation?
Yeah, write a letter to Ken Paxton and write a letter to the district attorneys in your area. So a few survivors that I know have written Ken Paxton, and his response has been that with the way that our system is set up in Texas, the district attorneys have the jurisdiction to do those investigations. I know in Houston, I don't remember the name, I don't know what county Houston is in, but that
mostly
DA
Harris,
has already, so that DA has already initiated an investigation of the diocese in that county.
All right. Well,
can I, if I may?
Yeah, please.
So, Carol, I just wanted to say thank you. You're doing something that I would never be able to emotionally handle. So, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I wanted to ask you, so what you've chosen to do, going in and helping people who've been abused, is amazing. The question that I had for you is, you're representing the survivors network of those abused by priests. Why priests? Why did you choose to dedicate yourself to this in particular?
I'm a survivor of child sexual assault by a Lutheran youth minister. And so when I went through the counseling and therapy that I went through at the time, they didn't differentiate the type of injury that occurs, whether it's a family member or a coach or a teacher who does the abuse. And with clergy abuse, it has an additional, and I'm not saying that one trauma is worse than another trauma, but with clergy sexual abuse for a child, it has an additional spiritual injury because in the child's mind, that's God or God's representative doing this horrible thing to them. And the damage that causes to a lot of survivors of clergy sexual abuse call it murder of the soul. And so it really can really destroy a child's sense of spiritual identity. And survivors take a really long time to reclaim their sense of spirituality or their faith, if they ever do.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I again, I mean, I'm just flabbergasted. I saw in the news this, and I feel helpless, and just seeing that there are people local in cities with amazing organizations like yours, like SNAP. I feel so ignorant that I never knew about SNAP until today, until I got to actually talk to someone from SNAP. I mean, I'm so glad that we're getting you and this organization out there. It's important. People need to know.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. And for those who are not in Texas, don't contact Paxton. Those in other states, contact your local attorney general.
Although I feel like our Attorney General in particular could probably use a little extra help.
I mean,
so
if you
you're in
are
New
a
Hampshire or Vermont,
of
go
Texas,
ahead. Go ahead and contact Paxton too, though. It's fine.
No.
Well, it couldn't hurt, but what he's written to a few survivors is that he doesn't have the jurisdiction. And I don't understand how our system is set up. Our district attorneys have the jurisdiction to do the investigations.
Yeah, federalism is tricky.
Yeah.
Apparently, he doesn't have jurisdiction in heaven or hell.
Yeah.
Well, for example, there was a case in Marshall, Texas, with a Lutheran priest who victimized 14 people, and this was back in 2002. And an attorney, Edward, I think his name was Edward Hone, he prosecuted this case. And the Texas Attorney General actually, it was the state versus this Reverend Thomas. And once he was convicted, then the victims filed a civil suit. And it was the first large payout. I think the payout was $30-something million to those 14 victims. And there was a settlement agreement with that synod that they would implement policies and procedures for reporting and how to investigate it internally. And they set up procedures to immediately report to law enforcement when sexual abuse of a child was alleged. Those procedures aren't in place in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question to you. Was in talking to a family friend, she mentioned that the Catholic Church specifically, is making these strides and efforts and trying to encourage trainings even at the very basic parish level, and that each individual church is now being designated as a safe space, and that there are efforts coming all the way from the Pope on down. And I wonder whether or not you buy into that, whether or not you feel as if things are trending in the right direction, whether they're going fast enough or not, whether or not they started from the place that they should have. Do you feel like things are actually getting better, or is this a problem that, some VR 3D web show is going to be talking about again in 30 years?
I don't see any actionable movement.
Really?
In the Catholic institutions. And in addition to that, the Catholic Church, Vatican, and the insurance companies, they lobby against statute of limitation reform. They spend more money lobbying against statute of limitation reform than they do in the payouts of their settlement agreement.
I mean, that seems like a smart investment.
No, I don't.
You can't fault capitalism for really shitty behavior. That's devastating to think about.
So,
a lot of Catholic survivors have shared stories of harassment and intimidation and stalking when they've made reports in their areas. And I don't know if that is still occurring, but it was very prevalent in some of the dioceses in Pennsylvania and in South Carolina. I can't really speak to the diocese here in Texas.
I feel like I'm risking our show getting buried just by even asking this question. But there are all these documentaries and things about how the Church of Scientology has had this incredible legal apparatus to just absolutely bury.
Demonetized right there.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah, we have no ad revenue after asking this question.
Just
it's over. Episode 3, we're done.
Right, we're done. We had a good run. Yeah, the Church of Scientology has done this incredible job of silencing people, of getting in the way of anybody actually having any recourse. And it sounds like from what you're describing that those types of tactics are in fact alive and well in Catholicism, which is maybe not an accusation I've really heard. And I'm wondering if I'm characterizing it correctly and if you feel like that's going on.
I know that it has gone on, and I don't know what the prevalence of it has been. There's a documentary out called Undeniable, and that's a documentary of Christy Foster's story. Her daughters were sexually abused by Catholic priests in their school in Australia, and her mom, Christy, fought to get the Australian diocese investigated and the statute of limitations lifted. And in that documentary and in their story, there was complicity with law enforcement, with the nuns, with the teachers, with members of the congregation. And so Christy Foster is my age. I'm 50. And so when her daughters were younger, in elementary school, the mode of behavior was what you call the holy hush, which is to silence the victims, silence their parents, and members in the community who are strong or members of the congregation also participate in the harassment and the shunning of the victims, the shunning of the family, and more so if the family takes a stand against the priest or the church or the diocese. And so that behavior has been the mode of operation for centuries. And I'm hoping that with the Pennsylvania grand jury report being out and with multiple states coming forward and deciding to do an investigation of the diocese in their state, that we can start to shift that culture. And I think that slowly it's happening. So if I think about the Larry Nassar case, Larry Nassar had 160 victims.
Just to clue everybody in, we're talking about the
160 victims
for one perpetrator.
Oh, I'm confident that number is conservative.
Low.
Yeah, when we're talking about Larry Nassar, we're talking about a coach at Michigan State University
College.
Yeah,
right, who was predating on the different young women who was working with him in the gymnastics field, and as a doctor, actually, I apologize, not as a coach, but as a sports medicine doctor. Also worked with the Olympic. The American Olympic team, and has basically been responsible for caring for.
It's okay. I know your knee hurts, but I have
women.
to touch you there.
Right, exactly.
Holy crap!
Oh yeah, no, that's literally something I heard from one of the victims.
Is this one of those stats, one of those baseball stats you're talking about, of just massive lists of numbers of horrendous things?
I have to make sure you didn't hurt anything up there.
Carol, how do you do this?
Because it needs to change.
It does.
I don't want my daughters, I don't want the next generation of kids to grow up in this environment. I want, when a child makes an outcry of sexual abuse, they deserve a thorough investigation, period. The predator needs to be held accountable, period. We have the laws in place now. We have the education in place. We know now what we didn't know 20, 30, 40 years ago. Now we know that a predator almost always has more than one victim. We can't pretend that we don't know that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're so grateful for the work that you've done specifically, and again, want to really highlight everything that Snap Network has done. I think that snapnetwork.org and snapnetwork.org/you_can_make_a difference. That page in particular was really remarkable in helping people understand what sorts of steps that they can be taking. And so we're really appreciative that you were able to give us a call tonight and fit us in. And I'm incredibly grateful for everything that you've been doing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk on the show.
And keep in touch, because we really would like to talk with you more later.
Yeah.
I will.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, you all. All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, call to action. Carol's doing the footwork here. You've
Yeah.
got amazing people who are going out there and following through this kind of crap.
She's
right?
doing the emotional footwork, like literally emotional footwork.
So here's the easy thing that you can do, you lazy bastards. Vote.
Hey.
Please.
If here's the thing is we're talking about representatives who are trying to pass the buck. We're talking about people who are saying, I don't know, that's not really my territory. Then vote in someone who will make it their territory.
If
Now's
protecting
the time.
kids is not like your job,
Right.
you
Then
know?
what the fuck is?
Seriously, I mean, if you're walking down the street and you overhear two people debating about the best type of hot dog, you don't necessarily need to get involved. I mean, clearly we all know that ketchup, mustard, relish, onions is the best way to go about it, but yeah, some people understand these things and some people are wrong, and that's okay. We don't have to get involved in every debate, but if you're walking down the street and you are recognizing that you're involved and you're seeing any sort of abuse in this way, you have no right not to get involved.
No
and I
shit.
think that in the more globular scale, even if we are not witnessing individual incidences, we are all witnesses to what is happening internationally.
Yes.
There's so many, I mean, a literal billion people dramatically affected when we talk about the number of Catholic folks and Christian folks and religious folks across the world. We're looking at a devastatingly large number of people, and to do nothing at this point is to just walk by the person who just got hit by a car without calling it in.
And there is a culpability. I mean, just because you don't see it, you can call your representative. You don't have to be the person who went through the abuse to call your local elected representatives and ask, what are you doing to prevent this from happening in my backyard?
Yeah, and one more time before we go to the phones is to repeat, 1-800-656-HOPE as a place to start if you don't know how to report to your local state. I mean, every state has their own child and protective services, child and family services, things along those lines. So there are different options, but that's a great place to start. Snapnetwork.org, SNAP, snapnetwork.org is a great organization. And yeah, from there, I think we're ready to take a couple of calls.
Yeah.
I think we are.
We've got some good callers on the line. We do have
Yes.
4 open lines, 512-686-0279. Yes, I am the person on the Talk Heathen account harassing you people in the live chat. So call in. Yes.
We're
And
about to get a little salty. Have you been stirring things up over there?
Maybe a little.
Maybe a little. Okay, well, all right, let's bring it on.
So
you're the one who brought me in here.
you started
On
it.
a sad episode, you brought me. I could be doing a FetLife profile.
Yeah, you were supposed to just be eye
I could be
candy.
talking
Nobody
about like,
asked you for
yipping
opinions.
and furry stuff, and I could be talking about kink and
Hey,
and,
hey,
and,
Eric.
and
Do you want to come back for a kink episode?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I can ensure you that invite if you can tell me your screen name. That's okay. We'll talk about it off air.
Yeah, we'll talk after this.
Yep, you're not getting mine either. I would like to say before we take the next caller that with the abuse going on, or I should say the abuse that has come to light in Pennsylvania, let's not all just bow our heads and think, oh, we thought Pennsylvania was so wonderful, but now we know it's a shithole. No, this is every state, every city, every town, every county, everywhere.
This is not a Pennsylvania
This is not
problem.
a Pennsylvania thing. This is just a one thing led to another that led to another that led to this coming out in Pennsylvania thing. Not, fortunately, there have not been Jerry Sandusky's in every state in the union.
That we
There have, but in terms of
to
on
lead
the
to
news
this,
and devastating a college football program.
To lead to this investigation that led to the other investigation that led to the investigation that came up with these 300 priests.
I mean, I hate to be glib about it, but it almost feels like a Coen Brothers movie. I mean, one of those just dumb, stupid coincidences that led to the unraveling
The
of this
mousetrap
massive
game
network.
of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's devastating to me to think that you have to get lucky in order to get justice in this way. And I hate even really talking about it because no matter how we frame it, that's the way it ends up looking.
So we have a couple callers, and I think we're going to go with Michael first. Michael, you are on with Megan, Christy, and Eric.
Hi.
Hi, tough episode to call in on. We appreciate you being here. I know that's a difficult lead-in. But what's on your mind?
First off, I want to say thank you to everybody that makes everything happen.
Us and the guys behind the wall.
Yeah, everybody. But I've got a tough question, and I'm scared to ask it because
It's okay.
I don't want to be a horrible person.
It's okay.
No judgment here.
No.
Is it wrong to be happy that your abuser died?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I think we can real quick short answer that no.
It's not wrong.
I definitely want to say that that's a complicated emotion and there's a lot going on. But before we get into any of parsing that out or hearing your story, I just want to express that what happens between your ears, the thoughts, the feelings, the reactions that you have are human and they're yours. And they are not subject to the judgment of God. They're not subject to our judgment. The things that you think and feel are your own. Now, if we talk about things that you say and do, then yeah, we can talk about accountability and doing the right thing. But those feelings that you're having are feelings. And it sounds very human to be having that particular feeling. And I don't think any of us could, for even the briefest moment, have any anger towards you for it.
No, and to be human, I mean, it's to be human. You go feel that. That is your emotion to have. That's not something that anyone can fault you for.
So moving forward, would you want to tell us anything about your story or about what you're going through right now?
I was probably like 4 or 5, and the thing that makes it horrible is that now I wonder if maybe this person wasn't also being abused because they were my same age. But they were physically violent toward me. And sexually abusive. And I was just, I don't know. It's really hard to talk about.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
It also sounds complicated, which it also sounds like you understand that it was complicated.
Yeah. it's not cut and dry.
No.
That's
No.
for sure.
But there's nothing that's invalidating your experience.
No.
And no one here is going to invalidate you. And I don't think anybody should or has any right to invalidate the feelings that you're having, just like they both said. And you have one massive hug from a whole lot of people, not just here in Austin, but in the live chat and online. I want you to know that you're not alone. And we're glad you called in.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we would just encourage you to do whatever you can do, whatever you need to do in order to feel whole, in order to feel human. I think that survivor support groups and therapy and these different things are really beautiful, and I do recommend them. There are, though, 1,000 different ways for people to feel better, for people to find comfort and feel whole. So if you don't feel comfortable talking to a therapist, if you don't feel comfortable going to a support group or something along those lines, I would only suggest that you do something. I do think that those things are useful, but whatever it looks like for you, whatever feels comfortable, whatever it is that you're willing to actually do, anything that's prescribed, anything that we could throw out there is you should do this, you need to do that, I would tell you to brush that off. But think about for yourself what feels like it might be healing and run towards that thing and know that there is opportunity and that there's people behind you.
And I'd say, if you haven't been able to tell this to anyone else, then from us, it's okay.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
Absolutely. And if there are any questions that maybe strike you after the show, after these intense emotional moments have passed, please feel free to reach out to us. I mean, we keep mentioning it, and for good reason. snapnetwork.org has incredible resources. Online.rain.org also has a lot of great opportunities. But failing all of that, if there's something that you're needing that you're lacking, our options are limited, but we'd be happy to point you in the right direction. So feel free to shoot us an email. That's just sex@atheist-community.org.
Okay.
And I
appreciate it.
Eric said it,
Absolutely.
but big hugs to you because that is not an easy thing to deal with, and all of my love to you. And I think probably all of the love that these two have as well.
For sure, brother. For sure.
Thank y'all so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Hope you
calling.
take care.
Take care. All right, so
Yeah.
how about not reusing condoms, huh? That's
Yeah,
The CDC had to say it twice.
Did they?
twice in one
They
summer.
twice
in one
literally
summer.
actually, I believe it was within 1 month.
Yeah.
But what if you turn it inside out?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
What if you
Nope.
wash it with bleach and
Yeah.
water?
See.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
We don't
What if-
use condoms.
What if you just wash it out and shake it up with some Purell? No. Still no.
That would burn.
Yeah.
Well, if you air it out first.
Henry Rollins actually tells this great story on stage about two high school couples with only one condom available between them.
No.
So,
Oh gosh, no.
rather than reusing it, because then
Who
you'd be
got
getting
preggers?
somebody else's spunk on your junk, which of course is unacceptable.
spunk the junk.
Don't spunk the junk.
No.
They instead
It's like
decided
double
to
dipping. You don't do
turn
it.
it inside out, which is just the least logical approach.
So you get each other's girlfriends pregnant?
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently.
So John and Sue ended up having Philip's baby because they got second dibs on the condom that Philip used.
Hold on. I called this?
Wait,
Yeah,
Did I call it?
That
You
actually,
did.
That actually
Holy shit.
happened. Yes.
Okay, hold on.
Oh my
But
gosh.
at no point did they think, what's on the
What's
outside?
the point of a condom, right? Okay, so the point of a condom is to keep sperm from getting inside the uterus. So I don't entirely understand that thought process.
So
that was just an anecdote. That's like a cover story, right? So that'd be like me singing Louie Louie. I didn't write it, but that is a story that I heard that I'm telling again.
Sure.
It's a devastating idea.
Oh, the alcohol that had to be imbibed that night.
Wow.
Or just
Damn.
teenage idiocy, or and stop me if you've heard this one, lack of available information, communication, and education regarding sexuality. Something that comes up.
Well, dig it. We have 2 more callers on the line.
Okay, well, sure. We'd love to take
2
a
of
few more
whom,
calls.
both of whom, I have actually gotten talked to before.
You lucky dog.
They are they're regulars in our live chat, and both have contributed to our newsletter.
Fantastic. Well, happy to
Amazing
hear from
human
some good
beings.
folks.
Well, I see Janet has actually been on there and waiting very patiently for a few minutes. So I think we're going to go with Janet first. Hello, Janet. How are you?
Hey, Megan, what's up?
Not much. Just listening to some super depressing shit. How about you?
Janet!
Hey, Eric. Hey, Christy.
Howdy.
Although the men have fabulous hair, I do want to say, Megan, your haircut is the
Right,
cutest.
we are loving this
you.
Pixie situation.
It fits your personality and
Thank you.
face so well. It's just adorable. And
I can
actually
go
got in trouble.
feminine. I
Somebody
can go a little more
complained.
masculine. It's all
I gotta tell
good.
you a funny story that we got an email complaint about my moderation because I commented on a host's looks. And my comment was, Megan's haircut is so cute.
Aw. Thank you.
So, yeah, I did break the rules by commenting
Wait,
on
you
a
got
host's
in
look.
trouble because of me? I feel so bad
Well, I got a
now.
complaint, yeah. Yeah, but your hair it was totally worth it.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Not to say that the guy's hair is not cute, but, you know.
I mean, we do what we can, but
Yeah.
You
know.
can tell who put the effort in this morning.
We put the anchor in the middle, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I can't fight it. I can't fight it because
No.
she ain't wrong.
No, not at all. But I gotta say, Christy and I are representing. We're holding.
Yeah,
up the
I am
longer hair.
not unproud.
Right,
Yeah.
You
dude.
guys have more hair between you than Megan had before. She got
Oh,
fat.
easy.
Oh, yeah.
Really? No, I think it was probably about equal.
Yeah, your hair was long. Yeah,
It was
Yeah,
long.
long,
Did
but
you see?
volume? You know, it's a major consideration.
Fuck you both.
Hey, I didn't say why? Huh? Is that even
Curls.
measure?
Curls.
Before we get into the story, Koopa Testudo in the live chat said, "Just buy another fucking condom."
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The short answer.
90 cents. Come on, guys.
Yeah, what's the average
That's
cost
great.
of a baby?
Or go to Planned Parenthood. They're fucking free.
Seriously.
Yep.
I mean, they're free in so many. The deli next to my house. I live next to this amazing po' boy shop, and they've got a giant bucket of condoms.
We are in Austin.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
they
do have
don't
that
have that
benefit.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
No question.
You can't find a bowl of condoms for free here in
'Cause-
Florida. Sorry, that's just not going to happen.
In Austin, you have to keep it weird somehow.
I mean, maybe down in Ybor where they're a little bit more, progressive. But in Tampa, nah. It's not gonna happen. You pay for them. But, so I actually have a topic that I had talked about for the first time since it happened in 1982 on John. If you guys know, the Stay at Home Atheist has a podcast, and he's one of our volunteers, John. And he asked me to tell my story on his podcast. So it just came out on Tuesday. So this is actually only the second time in my entire life I've talked about it.
Goodness.
Oh, wow.
And I was 12 in 1982, but I had been going to the same church since I was 6. Bus pulled up and said, hey, kid, do you want to start going to Sunday school? And it sounded pretty fun, so I started going. And, I stayed there for, until I was 12. And my aunt had been going out of town out of state for several years, and she always asked somebody to house sit. And my sister had just turned 18. She's 6 years older than me, and she just turned 18, so it was her turn. to house it. And she was a Sunday school teacher for the small children. My mom was in the choir. My dad was a deacon. And I had just graduated from, kids Sunday school to adult Sunday school. So it was a pretty fun time, I would say, in church, even though I never really kind of bought into the whole God thing. I still had fun going to church. I enjoyed learning the stories and outdoing all of the adults in Bible trivia, which was fun because they got really mad.
I remember that thrill, honestly. I think if I was dumber, I probably would have left the church sooner. But there was something nice about being real good at trivia.
I got kicked out of the kid Bibles, Sunday school, because the preacher's daughter got tired of being embarrassed by me smoking her in trivia. That's truly why, because she was 3 years older than me and still in the Sunday school class.
Oh, that's so satisfying, though. That's a very specific, deep track.
It really, really is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was like, this is not fair. You're kicking me out. But I was like, oh, well, whatever. So then I started, showing up the adults and the adults. And so it's okay. It was fun. So I actually really enjoyed my time at church, and there was a lot of, fun times and everything. But, my aunt had gone out of town. My sister went to house sit, not babysit. There was no babies. House sit. And she was dating the preacher's son. So like most teenagers, they decided to get them a little extra, make out time. But things apparently got too heated, went too far, and she said no, and he didn't stop. So 2:00 in the morning, the phone rings, and the phone never rang at 2:00 in the morning. We had 5 of 7 kids, and you were home by midnight, and that was it. So the phone ringing at 2:00 in the morning, you knew something was serious. So I got up because I'm always the nosy one, I guess, in my family. I was the only kid who got up, but I got up to go see what was going on. And my mom's crying, and my dad's angry, and he, his face is red, beet red, and he just, storms out of the house. I'm ordered to go back to bed, and if you know very much about, country families, you do as you're told. Yeah. So I went back to bed, and woke up the next morning, and my sister is laying in her bed, and she's crying, and I ask her what's wrong. She tells me to leave her alone, and I see that she has a hospital bracelet on, and I'm like, are you sick? And she was like, because I'm 12, what do I know? And she's like, just leave me alone. So, leave her alone, go in the other room, and figure I would just go ask mom and dad what's going on. And I hear my dad saying, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what we're going to tell everyone. And my mom saying it's not her fault. And I just decide, I'm not going to ask any questions, and because it's already clear to me in my, young mind, kind of what was going on. So I eventually go back in, try to, bring my sister something to eat. She didn't want it, of course. But and I eventually get her to tell me a little bit. And only thing she really said was that mom and dad were going to make her go to the police. Because back in 1982, they didn't really have, rape kits and the police showing up at the hospital and stuff like that. So you had to go, report it. That was a separate trip. And so she didn't want to report it. She, was embarrassed and ashamed. Yeah. But they made her. And so she left, crying. And when she came back, she was almost a zombie. And I asked her, what was going on. And she said, with a horrified look on her face, some of the questions they had asked her. Did she lead him on? Had she been a tease? Are you sure you said no? Is the bleeding that she got from the trauma just her period? And she was just devastated. Her face was just devastated. Yep. And I didn't really know what to do, because I'm like, a kid. So I'm like, it's okay, and I do remember telling her, I believed her, but I just said, like, it's okay, it'll be okay. And she's like, no, nothing will ever be okay again. And I'm like, I remember thinking, no, it'll be all right. It'll just be, it'll be okay. A few days and she'll feel better, because in my mind, I'm thinking, it's just like a sickness, like she'll feel better.
Yeah.
So then, I don't know if you hear my cat crying, but he's contributing.
We're all in mourning.
Yeah.
So then my family went to church several times a week, but you didn't miss church. That's just something you didn't do.
Right.
So when church, Sunday came, we went to church. And I think we kind of, like, everybody wanted to go because we thought somehow it would make us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So everything went well until the end of the service. And then the preacher asked for my sister to come up to the front. And she just, like, had this, again, the look of panic in her face, And I just kind of looked at her, and she didn't budge, like, she didn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked for her again, and she just, was like, looking like she wanted to run. And then the deacons came, and, my dad was a deacon, but he worked that day, so he wasn't there. And if he'd been there, I'm sure he probably would have busted some heads, to be quite honest.
Sure.
But the deacons grabbed her arms and took her up to the front. And she didn't want to make a scene, so she went. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they're going to say they're sorry that this happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
But
Laid on hands.
what they did, I'm sorry?
It said laid on hands.
Well, that's what I thought would happen. I thought that they would pray for her and, make her feel better. Mm-hmm. And he told her to turn around and face the congregation.
Oh, fuck.
And then they brought up her rapist, his son, and told her to apologize to him for falsely accusing him. And then they told her to apologize to the congregation for being such a Jezebel and being unclean.
Oh my gosh, Janet, that's so fucking horrible. I don't even know where to start.
You
And
can't.
then she fell to the altar and started crying.
Mm-hmm.
And the idiot preacher thought that she was wanting forgiveness from Jesus for her, crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets down on one knee and he's praying out loud for her, to, forgive her for her sins and stuff. And my mom, I just, like, looked at my sister, I looked back at my sister, and I'm like, I'm like frozen. I don't even know what to do. And my mom just, like, and all this took place really fast. So, if it sounds like my mom allowed this, it really was much quicker than it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom just, like, she was, like, livid, like, you could see her face. And, I knew my mom's mad face. She had mom's mad face on. And she, like, like I said, there's 7 kids in my family, and there were 5 of us there. So there were 4 of us left. She grabbed somehow all of our things and all of our arms and, like, propels us up to the front of the church, drags my sister to her feet, and we just, like, we just leave.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we never went back, to church. Not to that church. We went to a different church.
Mm-hmm.
So we never went back to that church again. And her rapist got away with it because the cop said that she should have gone to file the complaint the same day it happened, not the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Even it was 2:00 in the morning, by the way. And she had gone to the hospital right away, but that apparently wasn't good enough. And because she had told the police that she didn't want to do this, like, it was them making her, they said that it was forced. Anyway, for whatever reason, they said there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute him, so he got away with it. And my sister became anorexic. She was anorexic for, probably about 4 years. And then my father, about 2 months later, ended up having heart failure. So, like, life was truly never the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
were the same. So, yeah, that was my horror story. That's actually only one of my horror stories, but that was by far the worst. It still colors how I feel. If anyone ever asks
horrible.
me why I'm anti-religious,
Sure,
these are the reasons I'm anti-religious.
And
Janet,
I think
you're calling from Florida, but the allergies here in Austin are real bad. That's why my eyes are a little bit red and watery. It's
mosquitoes in both eyes at the
I
same time.
mosquito bites on both eyes. That's
I
a
think we
devastating
can-
story. Thank you for having the courage to share that with us.
And I think we can all say that the abuse does not just touch the victims, it touches everyone around the victims and everyone involved.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it
obviously.
changed everything about, my life. It wasn't, although
every woman in
my
that
sister
church
suffered more. And every boy too, because they were influenced by what they saw.
absolutely.
It was a really horrible time. I know, good things came from it. It's like you always try to find the good things that came from it. Like my sister eventually became a counselor for rape victims, and she worked with domestic abuse places and stuff like that. So she put her situation to good use eventually, but it took so long.
Yeah, that's a beautiful
get to that
epilogue,
point.
but not everybody's story ends that way.
Right.
I'm
No,
glad to hear that
absolutely
it
not.
did.
And I think,
Yeah.
in contrast to Christy here, who seems to be suffering some allergies, I am just downright fucking pissed. I mean, yeah, if I wasn't pissed, I'd probably be bawling my eyes out, but I'm fucking pissed. That is unconscionable and that is unforgivable. And again, not in your church, fuck you.
Right.
It's not just the priest,
Right.
it's across the board in everywhere.
So like Michael had said, where he asked a very hard question and hugs to Michael, your previous caller.
Yes.
Hugs to you
when
too,
that
Janet.
preacher passed away, I baked a fucking cake. Because
Yeah. Fuck that guy.
I don't even, I'm sorry.
With
but,
fucking candles.
He wasn't even the one who did the assault, but he sure as hell did, do wrong.
Yeah.
So when that, I don't even know if his son is still alive or not, but I was told that the pastor passed away, and I was like, okay, well, party time, because, that piece of shit. So,
Yeah.
But, okay, so now I want to, bring us up with a little bit of a funny story, because the same year, I was in 6th grade, and we had this Jeopardy-style sex education game. And, you had to ring in and get the right answers about everything to do with sexual education. And,
Hey, all I heard was 6th grade Florida
Sex
80s sex ed. I mean,
Well, I
those
lived
are
in
not
Ohio.
necessarily terms I
I mean,
thought would
I
all
heard
come
sex
together.
ed first, but maybe that's just
at the
me.
time I lived in Ohio.
Oh, okay, in Ohio. I mean, still,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
Ohio.
pleased.
Well, no. So that kind of feeds into what I'm saying. It's like we had sexual education. The teacher was actually really great. He was a younger guy, and he taught us a lot.
He had
of stuff.
experience.
that guy sucks.
He wasn't that kind of teacher, but he was actually a really good teacher, and he decided to have this game, and it was a lot of fun. Well, I ended up winning the the game, and I went home with a certificate that said, Janet wins the sex contest. And
If only they wrote certificates for the such
Can I
things.
get one of those?
I'm going to make you one now. My mom flipped her shit.
Oh.
But she's like, what is this? And I'm like, I want a trivia class. And then it was like, well, how do you know so much about that? Because, we didn't talk about sex in my family.
I
When
just thought of a
started
new
my period, I thought
patron
I was
goal.
bleeding to death. I was like,
Sex certificate.
I was like, hey, Mom. I was like, I'm bleeding. I think I'm dying. And she's like, oh, well, you're fine.
Yeah.
I remember.
In my family.
Oh my God, what the fuck is this? Oh, no, it's okay. It's just something I didn't tell you about for the last 15 years.
That'll happen every month of your life. Yeah, I remember being like 15, walking out of the movie theater with my dad as he looks at me and he says, or no, I was much younger than 15. I was like 12. And he goes, so I'm glad you enjoyed Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. I saw you laughing, and I'm glad that you liked it. I'm curious, though. There were a lot of things that you were laughing at that I didn't necessarily expect you to laugh at, and I guess I'm wondering.
You mean the penis pump?
Were you laughing because everybody else was laughing, or because you got the jokes? And I think even at like 12 years old, I was shrewd enough to be like, "Oh yeah, Dad, it's so silly and wacky and zany."
Holy shit, you were so young.
Yeah.
I just had this.
So I lost
I
my
remember when that came
realization.
out.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
I think we've aged ourselves already.
Yeah, so my mom threw my certificate away, so unfortunately I didn't get to keep it. But
Man, that would have been a family
That was something-
heirloom. I'd have that
was
over the
not something to
mantelpiece.
put in the scrapbook.
Well, we think you're the best at sex, Janet.
Well, thank you. That means everything to me. I could probably beat a couple of people in trivia, but
We
I don't
can
know
be in the
about
club.
Thank you guys for your time. I
thanks so
enjoyed it. It was
much.
a little bit therapeutic, but yeah, thought it'd end on a high note.
Hey, I
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks for
you
listening.
Thank you.
coming in.
All right, love you guys. Bye.
Bye.
And, before we start to wrap up, I just want to point out one more time. Of course, we want to keep the conversation going. We
Yep.
want to hear your votes on Pickles the Cuddle Pug
Yes.
versus
Yes.
some incredible
Did
contenders.
Pickles the Cuddle Pug ever come back up on the screen? Or did I just miss it? Okay, well,
yeah.
it's a little late.
There she is.
I don't feel better.
Is it a
I
she
don't
or a
feel-
he?
I don't feel comforted.
Are we gendering the dog?
We
Fuck this
can-
dog.
We can.
Wait, what?
No.
I don't like the dog. I think it's an ugly dog.
Yeah, I'm clipping that.
Okay.
So if
Live
you don't
on the
like,
air.
if you don't like
Remember
cuddles,
this moment.
Now's your moment to vote. Go to Facebook.com and check us out, Secular Sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I personally happen to have voted for Sigmund the Trigger Kitten. Who is my favorite, but there are a lot of great candidates.
Sigmund was adorable.
We're accepting submissions
applications.
from you, so we would love to see your emotional support mascot.
Micro pig in boots.
Of course, we want to hear more. We want to keep this conversation going, and we're happy to answer emails and to hear more about what's on your mind, topics for the future, things like that. But more important than any of that, I want to make sure to just once again say snapnetwork.org. An incredible organization doing really important work. And if you have experienced an abuse, if you have witnessed an abuse, if you have had vague suspicions of an abuse, I would really, really encourage you to call 1-800-656-HOPE and do whatever you can to address that situation and to change the world for the better if we can.
Dig it. I would like to piggyback another thing that I'd like to say, maybe.
Is this piggyback wearing
A piggy?
boots or I'm picturing a plastic poncho on this.
Me
identity
too.
page.
Me
That's
too.
really
With like
cool.
a little
Like a little
umbrella.
yellow
hat?
The hat, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got to have a hat.
Okay, so first off, now I need a micro pig in my life.
No shit.
but-
I met one named Bacon Bits.
That's horrible.
That's so dark.
Before we get off of the
pig train?
the heavy stuff.
Oh, okay.
Before we get off of the heavy stuff.
Yeah. You got to bring me back down.
Well, there was one other thing that I wanted to say, and that is that we've talked to people who have turned around and turned what was a traumatic experience into an inspiration that moved them
others.
to help others. And while we love that these people are doing what they're doing, if you have been a victim of a sexual assault, there is no expectation on you to have to do that.
You don't have to call in. You don't have to share your story. You don't have to be the face of a movement or the tip of a spear. But we do hope that you're getting help and that you're not struggling through this alone.
And implore you to at least share it with someone you trust, because carrying it by yourself is very heavy.
Yeah. Sorry, I brought us back down again. FetLife. The people want to know.
FetLife.
The people want to know.
FetLife, and next week will be same bat time, same bat channel, 7 o'clock here at YouTube/Secular Sexuality. We'll be talking about more sexual abuse.
Holy, why?
topics.
But in this particular context, not children.
Question.
Plus, Megan will for sure as shit rage quit.
Oh my God. I mean, if I didn't rage quit tonight, I'm sure as shit gonna rage quit next week.
So does Secular Sexuality have a Patreon?
We do.
We have a Patreon, a Facebook, and we're on iTunes.
And we have a
Everywhere
YouTube if you haven't figured it out.
Everywhere fine podcasts are podcasted.
If they want to find you, what do they type in on Patreon?
Secular Sexuality.
Patreon.com/secular sexuality.
Yes.
Do you have after show content? Are there things that you provide for your patrons?
In fact, we do. And tonight is going to be the first Patreon content.
Oh, hey, how convenient I asked.
That was not a setup at all.
But we do thank you for joining us. We thank everybody who called in, especially the bravery of sticking it out this particular week. And, we joke we have fun, but we do hope that you'll vote about our emotional support mascot and help us to keep these types of sometimes fun, sometimes difficult conversations going.
You'll be up against my 2 kittens. It is a fierce battle.
Thank you for having me on, you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week.
And hugs. Lots of hugs.
Hugs to everybody. And, even in these dark emotional times, Megan, what do we like to encourage people to do?
We like to encourage people, in the eternal words of Dr. Darrell Ray, to go out and give yourself an orgasm or give someone else an orgasm.